I have the honor of awarding the inaugural Aspen Institute Leadership Award. This Arts Leadership Award recognizes a seminal figure in American arts and culture whose contributions have inspired and challenged us. The recipient has tested the limits of existing art forms and used art in innovative ways to help us explain and understand ourselves and our whole society. His or her work has uniquely enriched our culture and left an indelible mark on the creative output for generations to come. And this year's winner, who was the very first recipient of the award, through the force of his creative genius, he has shown us the power of the arts, not only to entertain us, to delight us, to amaze us, but to teach us about our society, and again about ourselves, and make us think and question and help understand the world around us. The winner of the 2012 Aspen Institute Arts Leadership Award goes to George Lucas.
Thank you. I'd like to thank you all. I'd like to thank the Aspen Institute. My partner has been to a lot of gatherings in this organization, and that's mostly how I've heard about it. And I'm very much very proud to be a part of people who are trying to make it a better world. I've been in that same position ever since I started, and I've obviously when I make my movies, I'm trying to educate and inspire young people to think more, that they can do more than they actually think they can do. It's ironic that this week I've formalized my retirement so that I can spend my full-time energies to philanthropy, especially in education. And so I'm about to embark on a whole new life. Hopefully it'll go on for 20 years, which, it's hard to really cap what Mr. Rubenstein said, because he said everything I was going to say, but he said it much, much better than I could ever say it. But I'm also a firm believer in using your wealth basically to make it a better world rather than passing it on. I'm not sure it does your kids any good. I agree with him on that one. And, the best gift you can give your kids is to have them be self-reliant. And so I'm going to move and be inspired by this award to make the next 20 years of my life have meaning in terms of helping others, especially in the area of education. Thank you. Which one?
Either way. So I'm going to, I'm kind of glad that my parents didn't sign that thing. Just speaking as a child of New York. Anyway, I had a whole, until yesterday, a lot of questions that I have for George, but I'm going to talk a little bit with him about what he's just done recently. I think I have, I'm kind of the right person to do this. I suggested that Walter should do it. He said, no, you should do it. And then I thought, well, I have a kind of a long history with George. The first thing was we had a movie called Grease that we thought was going to be, and it turned out to be a successful movie, but 2 weeks before it came out, the chairman of Gulf and Western, Charlie Bluthorn, who you may know of, walked into my office with Barry Diller with a cover of Time magazine and a cover of Star Wars on it. And he said, "What is that? What happened? What are you guys, don't you know what's going on in the business?" And that was my first knowledge of Star Wars, when we thought we had a full playing field for the whole summer. Later I made a deal with George to do Indiana Jones for Paramount. If we get into it, I will tell you that I only got to Disney because of George Lucas. I think he knows it, but that happened for that. We then did Star Tours, the ride, a fantastic ride at Disneyland. Disney didn't have a lot of intellectual product. George helped us get by the early years with not only Star Wars turning into Star Tours, but Indiana Jones turning into a ride not only in Disneyland, but Walt Disney World in Europe, Disney outside of Paris and Tokyo, and the first meeting I had at Disney, the question was, how come Disney didn't make Star Tours and E.T.? So Disney was not really in that, and George has talked a lot about that. And the last thing is, interestingly, I now have a company called Topps, which is the longest licensee of Star Wars in Star Wars history. So I feel as though George and I have a long background here. So the first question I have is, why did you sell to Disney?
I wasn't going to
You historically have been this independent guru. Very few people have ever created anything from scratch, just out of their mind, that becomes now we know, a $4.1 billion enterprise from zero. And you have been standing up there as, I'm not going to be like the rest of the guys.
Well, I've been saying for a few years that I was going to retire because I have looked, I've been working, and I've always said to my friends, what I really want to do in the end is just make movies. I don't want to be in the movie business. I don't want to have to worry about whether they work or not. I just want to experiment and see if I can use the medium to do new things, which is where I started when I was in film school. And I kept saying I'm going to go back there because I had no intention ever of going into the theatrical film business. It was just like I got an opportunity, and then I got an opportunity, and then I got an opportunity, and I kept getting successful, and so I am where I am. But I've always wanted to go back and do my own personal films, and now I have an educational foundation, which I've had for 15 years, and getting to a point where I want to spend more and more time on that, and that sort of thing. So I said, I'm getting to an age where I need to plan what I'm doing here and go into the third part of my life, from being an adolescent to being a middle-aged person who has a career to actually being a Yoda who does things to help the rest of the world.
Yeah, but George.
And that ultimately...
We're going to get into philanthropy, and you've already given hundreds of millions of dollars to USC and other places. But who is going to direct these next 3 Star Wars? You tried once to let somebody else direct it.
I spent a long time sort of working on this. I was very fortunate, a very, very, very good producer who I worked with for 40 years, and has worked with Stephen, Kathy Kennedy, who's very, very, very talented, and I trust her completely. We've worked together on the Indiana Jones films. She did all the Jurassic Park films. She did E.T. She's done, won a lot of Academy Awards. She's the head of the Producers Guild. She's the head, on the board of the Academy. She's a real serious producer where I'm sort of an amateur. I'm a director that sort of pretends to produce, but basically I've only produced what I've directed. I've helped friends make movies. I've obviously produced a lot of movies, but I'm not a go-getter. I'm going to make a fortune producing movies, because I'm the first to tell anybody that if you want to lose a lot of money, go into the film business. Don't invest in it.
Wait a second.
Yeah.
I'm going out next week with a fund.
And I said another thing, which is, as I was along making my movies and having a good time and everything, which is how I got involved with Michael. I got involved with Michael on 2 levels. One, when I had Indiana Jones, I took it around to everybody. I knew it was going to be a big hit movie. I was wearing my producer hat, which I wear with a vengeance. And everybody said, no, we're not going to do this movie. It's too expensive and your deal is way too tough. And Michael's the only one that said yes. And he said, first of all, if it goes one penny over $20 million, you're going to pay for it yourself. And this had better be good because my reputation's on the line here. And of course, everybody said, oh, Michael, you're destroying the business. How could you let him have a deal like that? You know, he's going to destroy everything. It's the end of the world. We're all going to die. And then they, after it came out, they all said, well, gee, why didn't we think of that?
Well, the fact of the matter is, here's what really happened. The movie comes in, it's the greatest, a fantastic script. The opening scene, remember that ball rolling? Looked like that would cost more than any movie we ever made. So I said yes, but my bosses were like a little skeptical. So I went and met, you may not remember this, with you and Stephen. And I said, are you really going to do this movie for that price? And you said to me, the problem with the movie business is you guys, not us. If you tell me to make it for $1 million, I'll go get an 8mm camera and I'll go make it for $1 million. You're the ones that cause it to go over. And I said, oh no, that's not true. Explain that to me. He said, I'll tell you what I'll do. The scene, just so you understand how you can do things in the movies, the scene where that big World War plane goes to wherever they were going, Indiana Jones was going, I'm going to build a wing. And you're not going to see anything more than the wing, and my actors are going to walk on the soundstage, and you're going to see the wing, and you're going to hear a propeller, a sound effect, and then there's going to be a little line that goes across the ocean, and I'm going to get out of the plane on a sound effect. And that's going to cost about $8. And if you want me to build the whole plane with all the engines, I'll do that too. And I called up Barry Diller and I said, these guys are going to deliver. And they delivered. Yeah. And by the way, taught me a lot about how to be an executive.
Well, it was also, it really was my first job as a producer. And I said, look, I know how to make movies. I know how to do this. I know how to put them together. I know how to cut corners. I know how to do things at a price. I had done Star Wars at a price. You know, it only cost $13 million. And when I did that, I had the same situation there. Well, my first film, nobody would do, but we sort of snuck it through, and they never forgave me, which was THX. But when I did, and American Graffiti, they hated it when they saw it. They said, this isn't fit to show, and I put it on the shelf, so maybe we'll put it on television. So when I did Star Wars, Alan Ladd Jr., who was the executive on that one, said, I think you're great, I think you're talented, make your movie. I said, you know, it's kind of a space opera kind of thing with a big dog driving a spaceship. And he said, I don't care what it is, whatever you do is great with me. But he had the same problem, which is he had to do battle with the board of directors through the whole picture for over a year and a half, because they said, you're nuts, this is crazy, what are you doing? So I haven't had a real high record in Hollywood in terms of the boards and the people above and all that sort of thing. But getting back to your question, which is also one of the issues, is after Star Wars, which is where I got you your job.
No, let me tell you what happened. No, wait a second. Yeah. Let me tell you what happened. What happened is, George, in the making of THX, was kind of screwed by Universal.
No, Warner Brothers.
Well, excuse me, Warner Brothers.
American Graffiti was Universal.
Right. So he immediately took a somewhat dislike of, let's call them, Suits. He then goes and makes this fantastic movie called American Graffiti, which, is it true you said you made it to show your father that all those years of racing cars up and down the Modesto streets was a worthwhile adventure?
Yeah, he thought it was a lost cause. I spent 4 years cruising the main street of town chasing girls, and I wanted to prove to them that actually had a lot of value.
I mean, you came from a small town, Modesto. You like girls, you like cars. You didn't particularly like school.
Right.
You didn't think you were going to be in the movie business, you were going to be an auto mechanic?
Well, yeah, I worked in a car service, and I wanted to be a race driver.
And just by luck, whose car did you fix?
No, well, yeah, but that was when I decided that I was going to go to USC, but I didn't even know why, because I was an anthropology major, and my best friend was a business major, and he said, I'm going to USC, why don't you come with me? And they got a school out there that teaches photography, and I got down, and there was a cinema school where they teach you how to make movies. I said, this is insane. How can you go to college and learn how to make movies? I know nothing about movies.
How many movie theaters were in Modesto?
Huh?
How many movie theaters in Modesto?
2.
And did they play all the movies?
No, you had the A theater, which did the big movies, and the B theater, which did all the horror films. And that was about it.
But you made 8 films as a student at USC.
Yeah.
So you knew what you wanted to do. Okay, anyway, to get back, so now he writes, has a development deal at United Artists, right? Writes American Graffiti. They pass, goes to Universal. They pass. Francis Ford Coppola, for whom you became friendly, push it through?
No, Francis and I had started a company together called American Zoetrope. And we wrote a whole bunch of scripts. We had a little thing. We were going to do alternative movies, art films, the kind of movies I wanted to make. And Francis is a real character and a real, I don't know, he's one of those big, larger-than-life people that can get anything done. So when Warner's got sold to Kinney Corporation, he went in the first day and said, we're starting this movie tomorrow. Where are you guys? What's going on? Either, put up or shut up. And they were confused, and so they said, well, okay, we'll do the movie. So we got a deal with them for 7 movies, and mine was the first, and it basically bankrupted the company, and they kicked us out of Warner Brothers and said, don't ever come back, and it was not pleasant, but...
So you had a great regard for the powers that be. So then you deliver, Graffiti. And what did Universal say when they saw it?
They didn't like it.
And what did they then do?
They put it on the shelf and said, we're going to maybe release this on television, but we're not going to put it in the theaters.
And didn't they cut 4 scenes, including
they cut 5 minutes out.
That great scene
my
with
first
the
scene, they cut 5 minutes
salesman?
out. The second one, they cut 5 minutes out. Like it makes any difference, but...
But the salesman scene, where he's trying to sell him the car?
No. Well, yeah, that one and one where he tells off his teacher. But anyway.
And then Star Wars wasn't so easy either. Some of those executives were impossible.
No, it wasn't the executives, because in those days, there was only one executive at the studio. They didn't have a whole bunch of people there. He had an assistant, and then you had the president, and then you had the board. And in that particular time, Fox was not doing well. They were on the edge of bankruptcy, so the board actually ran the studio. And so everything had to go by the board. And of course, I know I didn't know anybody then. I was a movie guy, but now I'm in San Francisco, and a lot of those guys are, big hedge fund people and stuff, and I know them. And they said, oh yeah, we were always for the movie and everything. And I kind of agree. I kind of believe a couple of them that did. But as I say, I did Star Wars, huge hit, and then I was doing, then I did Indiana Jones, huge hit, and then...
yeah, but then what happened is Disney went into disarray, and there were 2 candidates to be CEO.
Well, it went, yeah, Disney changed hands, was bought by the Bass Brothers. The Bass Brothers Richard Rainwater came to me and said, look, we want you to be the new CEO of Disney. And I said, we'll buy your company. We'll buy it for, I think they were offering me $200 million, which at the time was a lot of money. And they said, look, we'll guarantee that in 5 years, that $200 million will be worth $1 billion. Because we're sitting on a gold mine here. It's just sitting here not doing anything. And I said, it's tempting, but I'm not going to do it because I'm not a good CEO of a big public corporation. I will never, ever work for a public corporation. Even at a young age, I was very smart. I said, I know what that's like. If there's anything I don't like with the studios telling me what to do, it's even more with the government telling me what to do. So I said no. I said, I can't really do this. I'm a movie maker. I'd spend all the money in the parks. I wouldn't be a good head of the studio program. He said, well, at least you can help advise us to find somebody. And so I said, yeah, I'll help you. So I went to Fort Worth and came back and went back and basically recommended Frank Wells and Michael Eisner. And so I've been sort of associated with the studio ever since then, and working in various capacities in the parks and putting things together.
Just so, by the way, it was 10-2 against us when they talked to you. And it was an ex-executive at Fox who was getting 10 votes.
Yes, and I said, don't ever go there.
Right. I was the lesser, I was the better choice.
Yes, definitely. No, they were, it wasn't Alan Jr., but there was somebody who wasn't a good executive. And I've been on the wrong end of all the executives, so I know who the good ones were and who the ones we want to avoid.
The thing that's amazing to me is from American Graffiti, which got tons of awards, and it's a fantastic movie, to Star Wars, to Indiana Jones, not an easy road. Not a road like today, where if you walked in with something, they would say,
well,
sure.
It was not an easy road. Nobody wanted those movies. Everybody wanted Indiana Jones, but nobody was willing to pay for it, except you. And, it's hard to convince people in the end that, 90% of nothing is not as worth as much as 10% of something. And they've always said, well, we got to get the 90%. I said, well, then go someplace else. So what happened is, because of my stubbornness and my wanting to be free to do whatever I wanted to do and be creative and do what I wanted to do without anybody telling me what to do, I then did which I just told you, never invest in movies. That's rule number 1. That's 101 in the movie business. In the movie business, we call them suckers. And there's always suckers. It's like a Carney thing. It's like, and finally, in the last, 15, 20, 30 years, even the studios realized that they were suckers and that maybe they should get other people to go and finance the movies. But, we went through Dennis and we went through international Panamanian, Laotian corporate conglomerates who were financing movies and everything. I just said, look, I'm tired of this. I'm going to finance my own movies. I'm going to take all the money I made on American Graffiti, all the money I made on Star Wars, and I'm going to finance my next movie myself, which obviously does, about the dumbest thing you could do. And of course, nobody could believe I would do it. But I did it, and because I had a lot of confidence in it. And, sequels don't always work. Everybody thinks they do, but there's a lot of dead sequels sitting out there. And so that's when I said, okay, I'm going to be independent. I started LucasFilm. I started doing all this on my own, and running my company, and started into licensing, which wasn't a very big deal before that, except at Disney. And and then when I decided I was going to retire, I said, well, who am I going to give this to who can make it go for another 100 years? And well, as now in a situation with Pixar and Marvel to understand what having a semi-independent company is, and saying, okay, you guys do that stuff because that's what you know how to do. And and I had a lot of experience with Bob Iger, who did Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, so I knew him, and he put that thing on the air. It was an educational program, and he put it on network television for 3 years. And I was amazed that he always stuck with it, even though it was a hopeless exercise.
Now, they bought everything except your property in Marin, right?
Yeah, they didn't get the property, they didn't get the cash in the company. There's a few things, a number of things they didn't
get. The studio there,
They got the studio. I mean, basically I got the company. But I own all the property.
But you were building a new, this is kind of dear to my heart, this piece of it. You were building a new studio next door in this beautiful area, and the local people decided to fight you in that. And they fought you. Is that your continuing concern or theirs?
What happened was I built Skywalker Ranch, which was a nice, pleasant place to work. And Marin County is very, very green. And I am too. So I said, look, if you really want to preserve the environment, the best way to do it is to do what I'm going to show you how to do, which is about 2,000 acres. I took 100 acres and I built a corporate headquarters there. And I said this, and I put all the rest in open space. And so I said, now we've protected, 1,900 acres, and from a subdivision. But they were so fixed on subdivision that when I finally got to do, I had 6,000 acres, so I was like, that was the first one. Then the second one I did, it got tougher, and they made it harder, but I got that one through. Same thing. And I kept trying to say, look, this is so much better than a subdivision. All the taxes are profit. We have our own fire department. We have our own police department. We have control over the people that are here. There's no teenage kids running around the neighborhood throwing rocks in windows. I said, and where you have, for a company, you have 3 trips per person, for the subdivision you have 7. I said, there's lower traffic, it's just much, much better. And you can't see it from the road, it doesn't change the environment, everything is great. But when I got to the third part of it, because there were 3 parts, and I finally got the third part took me 25 years. Well, it took me 17 years to get the second one done, and I got the master plan done on the third one at the same time I did the master plan on the first one. And that took 17 years. So then I finished that one, and I went to do the last one, which was 7 years of work. And in the end, they just said, the neighbors, which was basically one neighbor who was a real estate developer, gathered up the little homeowners and they said, no, we're not going to let you do this. And they said, we'll sue you to doomsday. And I knew at that point I was retiring, because this just happened like a year ago, 2 years ago. And I said, I know I'm retiring, and if I can't get this done now, when I sell it to somebody, I didn't know who I was going to sell it to at that point. But I didn't care what studio, whoever even hedge fund, nobody would let me build that studio there. It was a labor of love, it wasn't a labor of wisdom. And so I said, if I don't get this thing done by this date, then I can't do it, because it just won't happen. So they said, we're going to delay you for another 3 or 4 years. I said, well, I can't do it. So now we're putting in, I gave it to a foundation that has affordable housing, and they're going to put affordable housing in there, which I think is a good thing.
So I thought
they're going to have to fight the neighbors just like I did, but they got a better shot at getting it done.
So I thought, of course, your affordable low-income housing in Marin County, which they couldn't fight you on because it's very liberal, but they fought you on this great studio, that you had seen Annie Mame when Rosalind Russell was asked to buy a piece of property next door because a Jewish person was going to buy it. She said she bought it and she made it a Jewish home for refugee children. I thought, or Disney's America in the Hunt Country in Washington, D.C., which they fought us on and won, and now what they have in that very site near Manassas and so forth is a Jiffy Lube arena, a shopping center, and low-cost housing. So I thought you had read all about Disney's America and seen Aunt Rosalind Russell and decided you're going to put low-cost housing there because they won't let you have your dream.
I've been a big fan of low-cost housing. Marin County is one of the richest counties in the United States. And the average home price there is like $2 million or something like that. It's ridiculous. And as a result, there's no housing for the people that work there. There's no housing for the firemen or the teachers or anybody that actually works there. And it's always been an issue. And I figured, well, here's a chance to actually because if I can't use the land to build a studio, I'll and I know the people at the San Francisco Foundation who are doing it, and I got with them and I said, I think there should be low-income housing. I turn it over to you to make that happen.
So to close us out, I had read or heard that your favorite cartoon comic book growing up was Scrooge McDuck, and now you are a philanthropist, Scrooge McDuck, having all this, which is a nice arc, a Joseph Campbell arc of loyalty and friendship. You have grown from loving the idea to now having the ability to be philanthropic. And is that going to be 90% of your work, or
Well,
50% of your work?
Well, I'd say, maybe 60, 70%. I've got Melody, so she keeps me very busy. And, but, actually I have taken that property and I built a giant money bin, and so I'm filling the whole thing with dollar bills and coins, and I'm going to swim around in that for a couple of years until I get tired. Then I'll start giving it away. But it is ironic with
There was
Scrooge McDuck is like, when you're a little kid, you look at it and say, well, that's what I want to do. I want to have a giant money bin where I just got all this money, which is, I imagine, what everybody else in the room thought. And everybody gets their money bin, and then you get it and you say, I don't need this money bin. I don't even need the money. So I'm just going to try to do good things, because in good things you get your heart filled up. And you don't have to worry about the money anymore. So.
Well, I think you have shown the audience something that I've known, which is finding somebody who has a very strong creative brain. And if you see any of these movies, the humor, the arc, the friendships, the loyalties, the ethos, the mythology that is built in all these movies is there. And at the same time, you have a person who on one hand kind of is, oh shucks, I fell into this by mistake, who created a business nobody has done since Walt Disney, out of his own head, his own creativity, and his own business acumen. So George, you deserve this award, and I congratulate you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, and good night.